Welcome back to Preservation Travels with Lane and Kevin. Today, we're on the Great River Road in Louisiana. Welcome back to Preservation Travels. Like I said, today we're on the Great River Road here in southern Louisiana, just about an hour outside of New Orleans and about an hour outside of Baton Rouge. We are a stone's throw from magnificent homes like Oak Alley, Nottoway, Houmas House, Felicity. They're all up and down this road, but we're bringing you a Creole cottage, a very vernacular home. But the thing that makes this home absolutely spectacular is it is, in my opinion, the finest example of an almost restoration that we've been able to bring you. Yes, there have been some modern upgrades. There have been some changes made so that we can't call it a true restoration, but it is one of the finest examples of someone taking a home and taking it back to its earliest and finest use that I've yet seen. And better still, I see little hints that it may be way earlier than the documentation even hints at. So let's take a walk through and let me show you the Creole Farmhouse. Well, if you look at the paperwork about the Creole Farmhouse, you're going to see its build date listed as 1840. And the doorway I'm standing in is absolutely 1840. That Greek Revival influence, you'll see the shoulders on the entablatures and architraves, absolutely 1840. But we know that this is not the original trim work in this house. I see hints that this property is actually much earlier, potentially even 18th century. So let's talk about what those hints are. Now we're standing in a Creole cottage. It is a 2-pile home, 3 rooms wide. Why do I think it may be earlier? Well, first of all, we know that this home is built with buissage construction. Hope Farm is actually built with buissage construction and its build date is 1789. So what is buissage? Buissage is the French form of half timbering. It comes from the colombage tradition in France. It was brought here by French settlers. Inside these walls, you'll have a series of half timbered beams. In between those timbers, you will have baton that run at angles all the way up. And in between the baton, you will have stuffed a material called torchis, which becomes the buissage once it's set. It's basically a mix of mud, and down here this far south, it's going to be Spanish moss packed up against those baton. The French brought their colombage here. They saw the indigenous people doing wattle and daub. They mimicked that with the baton, their staves, and packing in that torchis running up the wall, and it created these wonderfully insulated homes. And we know that is the construction of the inside of the walls of this house, and that is a very early form of construction. A couple of other hints of the earlier period of this house. The ceiling, as you can see, is tongue and groove. Those tongue and groove boards are all hand planed and they're irregular widths. That tells me that they were not produced in a sawmill. So depending upon what time and what period this remote southern area of Louisiana got its first sawmill, we know that these tongue and groove boards throughout the house in every room were not produced in a sawmill. You can see the ceiling beams that are in every single room. Do you see how they have this beaded edge? The beaded edge shows that those were always meant to be exposed. As they are today, they were never meant to be covered. That's a decorative edge for a beam that's meant to be seen. And that is a traditionally earlier form of architecture. And then finally, the floorboards under our feet. Absolutely exquisitely beautiful cypress boards. Not a single one of them is a regular width. They are all different widths. And there's no real evidence that they were ever covered. So we can't use the traditional excuse, which is, well, they were, 1840s hewn boards, but they were meant to be covered with oilcloth. There's no real evidence of tacks. So these were all individually hand-cut, hand-planed boards and placed on the floor. So lots of evidence that the original construction of this house may be 18th century. And then in the 1840s, we got a facelift. What are some of the things that happened in the 1840s to this house? Well, as you can see here, we have this beautiful Greek Revival frontispiece, if you will, into the entryway into our dining room that mimics the frontispiece around the front door. We now have a singular front door rather than French doors like we have on the opposite sides. This would have originally been the same as the other two sets of French doors in the 1840s when we got our update. We changed it to this very Greek Revival frontispiece and put in a singular front door. Remember, the reason they're called French doors is because they are a French architectural tradition. There's a reason we call them that. This is a very vernacular home. It was always a farmhouse. This is not in the grand tradition of our later Greek Revival, heavily architect-influenced homes. This is a home that was built for necessity, for need, by a Creole family that were going to grow crops on this land. Originally, this land was hundreds of acres. Now 40 acres remain, and the home is being sold with right at 4 acres. What crops were produced on this property, and why is it the Creole Farmhouse? It's because it started out as indigo. They tried to grow indigo here. Then they went to sugar, but then they discovered that this was the perfect soil to grow Creole tobacco in. And so this is the first place that Creole tobacco took its foothold. And so we have the Creole Farmhouse.
This episode is brought to you by Manuka Honey. Manuka makes Manuka honey, a single origin honey that comes from New Zealand, where the bees only feed on the nectar of the Manuka tea tree, making honey that is pure, rich, and complex, with a creamier texture that is on a completely different level from the normal honey you find at the supermarket. Manuka sent me a jar and a squeeze bottle of their MGO 850 Plus Manuka honey, their best-selling honey. The 850 Plus honey has this creamy caramel texture that melts in your mouth and is unlike anything I've ever tried. I can grab a spoonful out of a jar to put in my favorite beverage, or squeeze some honey out on some toast or oatmeal. It's so delicious. This is just the perfect way to treat myself, and something that is going to keep me strong through the colder months, and the perfect gift for people I love, to keep them sweet and healthy too. The bottom line is, these nutrients really support your optimal immune and digestive health, and it's delicious. Head to monocora.com/restoration to get your Monocora and receive 3 free gifts with your starter kit, a $25 value. That's monocora.com, MANUKORA.com/restoration for the ultimate honey.
Here we are in the dining room. Once again, one of my favorite spaces in this beautiful home. You'll see here we have not a traditional center hall design. That hasn't evolved in architecture yet, and it's certainly not being used in a farmhouse, but we're beginning to see the evolution of it for airflow. We have these beautiful double French doors entering into the back gallery. We have the doorway going into the front parlor, and then we have the doorway onto the front gallery. So all of these spaces could have been opened to create airflow to keep this space in southern Louisiana as cool as possible in the southern months. This is an extraordinary space. This would have been the most formal room in the house, even before its update. So we see a really beautifully stylized mantelpiece, but again, take a look at these gorgeous ceiling beams of irregular widths and the obvious hand planing marks. That's what I cannot get over, is even 200 at least years after this home was built, you can still see the hand planing marks, both on the ceiling and on the floors under our feet. A real estate point that I want to point out to you, these homes, of course, are always under threat of fire. It's one of the ways that we lose these homes most frequently. This owner, when he rehabilitated this beautiful home, put in a fire suppression system. That is a priceless thing to have, to protect your investment and to protect this beautiful historic property. Another item, I typically don't point out decorating items in these properties because obviously you'll be changing all of that if you become the new steward. Not only is this home just immaculately and impeccably decorated, but you have to see, people are always asking, what is a picture rail for? And this is one of the times we've been in a home where it's actually being used properly. You can see that he has picture rail nails that are secured above that picture rail, and all of the artwork in the rooms has been suspended from those picture rails. So he's just doing everything right here, and I absolutely love it. Well, we say that the hardest space to integrate into one of these beautiful historic properties is a kitchen, a modern kitchen. They're so difficult. And yet again, the owner here has taken an original space and has integrated this modern kitchen without it feeling jarring, without it feeling anachronistic or out of place. Obviously, the kitchen would never have been in this home to begin with. It would have been a building, a dependency building out near the smokehouse, now out near the chicken coop. But here we have it integrated into the home in a way that feels absolutely natural, absolutely right, and as though it's just part of the evolution of the home. Off of the kitchen, we have a beautiful pantry, a double pantry space, a laundry room, and a half bath. This is being used as an informal parlor, and this space shows us the earlier, very vernacular version of this home, what it would have looked like before it got its trendy facelift in the 1840s. So you see our original French doors, our double French doors exiting onto our front gallery, much more simple entablatures and architraves, and a much cleaner classical line on the fireplace mantelpiece. You'll notice that all of our fireboxes have a simple plaster surround and a plaster finish on the inside. Remember, this is early architecture. We have not gotten to the point where a lot of high ornamentation is coming in. But the older I get, the more I find this form of architecture to be the absolute most beautiful form, because every one of these pieces was done by hand. I love all of the elements that we see in this space. This is the front bedroom. Underneath my feet are these absolutely exquisitely beautiful cypress floorboards that run throughout the house. And again, another very simple mantelpiece and firebox that you see here. One of the things I also want to point out to you are all of the interior doors. The interior doors are made from the same tongue and groove beaded boards as the ceilings. They are also irregular width boards. It just shows us that this home is truly handcrafted top to bottom, and then filled with exquisite antiques that bring us all the way through the life of this property. This is the back bedroom, and I brought you back here to show you a modern integration. Now, I never show you modern integrations in these historic homes because typically modern integrations are so jarring, they look so out of place that I would rather you just ignore them and not even see that they're there. This is the exception to the rule. The current owner has added these two exquisite armoires on either side of this door. These are new build. These are just placed here, but they look like they could have been here since this home was first constructed. So I wanted to show you this not only as, isn't this great for this home should you choose to be its next steward, but also if you are in the process of doing a rehabilitation on your historic house, this is how you do a modern integration of storage space or even a bathroom space. Something anachronistic for the space can be made to look like it's been here from the very beginning. Gorgeous job on these. We're going to send you off today from the rear gallery of the Creole Farmhouse. We had to show you that it is December the 11th when we're shooting this, and that banana tree is still green. So if you're looking to make a move to a place where you can be the caretaker of an incredibly important historic home, one of only a few left, and you can enjoy a warm climate, this may be just the place for you. Now, we remind you again, we are not real estate agents. We do not represent this property. We do not gain at all from its sale. We're merely here to show you the incredible architectural history that can be found right here in the United States. This home just happens to be for sale. If you are interested in becoming its next caretaker, you can find all of the information that you need for the real estate agent and the listing in a Zillow link below. And I know that Peter would love to visit with you about becoming the next caretaker of the Creole Farmhouse. Remember, this beautiful home sits on 4 acres. It has a workshop and an additional building that's being used as storage right now, but could very easily be turned into a guest cottage. And it's sitting on the Great River Road, one of the South's most popular tourist destinations for architectural tourism. So, we appreciate you being with us. Thank you for joining us on our tour of the Creole Farmhouse, a Creole farmhouse here in southern Louisiana. We hope you'll give us a like, a subscribe, leave us a comment about your thoughts about this beautiful home, and we'll see you next time on Preservation Travels with Lane and Kevin.